Hey, welcome back, everyone. All right, some interesting news updates. All right, so I want to go over what is happening in Georgia. Interesting note. Now, Facebook initially declared the story was false, and then it now appears that the story that they used to debunk it has been 404. In other words, they pulled it offline. So presumably, they were not able to justify their claim the story was fake. Talking about this video surveillance, surveillance footage of these poll workers telling people allegedly to leave, telling the poll watchers to leave, then pulling out suitcases of what appear to be ballots, and then continuing then to count them. Now, it was allegedly debunked by Facebook. Facebook appears to have 404'd its debunking article because, here's what you have with these fact checkers. These fact checkers come out and they say, oh, well, you can't prove this, but they don't investigate it. People are saying this is the case. Reports are coming out to the case. They don't investigate it. They report rumors, frankly, and they try to pretend their rumors are enough evidence to, debunk an entire investigation, essentially. Total nonsense, total garbage. I'm going to be giving you the link to it. I hope you'll all watch the video yourselves and draw your own conclusions from it. But I want to go over a bit of what's happening right now and also tie together a bit of what else we're seeing related to this. See here. Oh, well, JCA Elliott Scoop. I really appreciate it. Yeah, who was that woman that was arguing the video was debunked? There was enough time to watch the video as it was released hours previously. The Democrats are already saying it's fake. Yeah, like I said, it appears. I just checked it a minute ago. The article that Facebook had published, it's fact-checking article, appears to be offline. It does appear Facebook 404 to their article, meaning they probably realized that their own debunking article was nonsense. We'll have to see. Again, yeah, good to see y'all here as well. Now, I'm going to go over a few different stories today as usual, and also try to answer some questions as we go through it. So if you folks have questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try to get to them. All right, so let's go through it now. Now I'm gonna post into the live chat the different links, and so for those of you watching this video after it premieres, click into the live chat, and you can see all the links that I'm posting in there. So we'll start off with Epoch Times, and also I'm gonna paste in here a link to the YouTube video for this. So maybe after you're done watching the show, check it out. Check that out as well. So you can watch. It's 12 minutes long. Watch it yourself. Draw your own conclusions on it. But let me tell you, let me go over what the Epoch Times is reporting on it now. It says Georgia video footage allegedly shows poll workers staying behind producing suitcases of ballots. Now, let's go into this. It says President Donald Trump's legal team on December 3rd presented surveillance footage of a Georgia state legislature hearing that appears to show ballot counting workers telling poll observers late at night on election day to leave before continuing to count and pulling out what appears to be suitcases filled with ballots. You can watch the video. Again, it's on YouTube. I just posted it. It says here, a spokesperson for Fulton County in an email to the Epoch Times did not dispute the authenticity of the video. People say it's disputed. We did our homework on this. There's no evidence saying it's disputed. Now, this is a quote from the spokesperson. To date, we are aware of no credible reports of voter fraud or wrongdoing in Fulton County. Any credible report of such activity will be investigated and addressed as provided by Georgia law. But didn't refute this, gave no reason to refute it, gave no evidence suggesting what was actually taking place. Instead of these people it looks like they're telling people to go home and then pulling out suitcases of what look like ballots and then counting them. Now, continuing this, in the hearing on December 3rd, Jackie Pick, a lawyer who is volunteering with the campaign's legal case, said the team received video footage from State Farm Arena's vote tabulation center in Fulton County, Georgia. The team said that GOP poll watchers weren't allowed to watch the counting process in the poll center. According to Pick, an unusual occurrence took place later in the evening at around 10 p.m. local time. A woman described as a blonde woman with braids told workers to stop counting and notified everyone to go home. Now, describing the video footage, Pick said, everyone clears out, including the Republican observers and the press, but 4 people stay behind and continue counting the tabulation well into the night. And the 4 counted unobserved until 1 a.m. in the morning. Now, Pick said the video footage shows Fulton County election workers waiting at their scanning areas until GOP poll watchers and reporters left the room before they started, quote, scanning ballots, ostensibly without any observation. Pick noted this contravenes state and county law. It appears they broke the law. It appears they excused people, told them to go home. And it appears they pulled out what looked like suitcases of ballots and then began counting them. And so, now, for those of you who missed the link, I'm going to post it in again, because save this link, watch it yourselves, draw your own conclusions on it. It's 12 minutes long. I'll post it in the live chat. Save that link, watch it yourselves, draw your own conclusions. But I think it's pretty damning. It's pretty bad. And again, Facebook declared this was fake news. It looks like they pulled their debunking article offline. And this is what you have. This is what you have with these fact checkers. Within an hour or so of this thing going online, they posted their fact check and declared it was fake. What investigation did they do to debunk it within that time? Nothing. The most they could say is that it's refuted. The most they could say is that, oh, well, other people say that, this isn't true. That's the most they could say in terms of an investigation. But they use that to declare these things are false. And then, their drones go around the internet telling everybody it's fake and debunked. It's total nonsense. And, and Facebook again pulled this thing offline. Now, using the same logic that they used to quote unquote fact check these stories, declaring things are fake, alerting people they're posting fake news if they post these links, doing this, making people think this is fake news, even though they don't do proper investigations, based again just on it being contested, people saying otherwise. Using that same methodology, you could contest half of the reports coming out of the mainstream press right now. You could use that same method if these were objective organizations and they weren't biased and altering information like this. You could use that exact same way of doing things, right? You could use that exact same way of doing things to declare that half these media articles from the mainstream media are, fake. If Facebook used the same standard on these things. Let's go further into the story, and then I'm gonna tie it into some other stuff we're watching. So give me a minute. It says at 11 p.m., once everyone was gone, the workers are seen pulling ballots out from underneath the table. They pull ballots out from underneath the table. That's a direct quote from this press conference. At the hearing, Pick asks rhetorically whether it's normal to, quote, store suitcases of ballots under a tablecloth. Now, again, these are supposed to be transparent elections. This is determining the president of the United States. This is at a time when public trust in our election is on the line. Is it normal behavior for poll watchers to leave and journalists to leave, and then the people counting the ballots pull suitcases from out from underneath tablecloths, right? Why were they hiding suitcases underneath the tablecloths? And then it looks like they're counting ballots. Real quick, Claudia, really appreciate the support. Remaining anonymous, your work means more to others than you know. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Jacob Ellinger, really, really appreciate it. And actually, really thank all of you. And I'm not getting to everyone, but I want to kind of go through this a bit. I always appreciate the support, folks. Now, I'm going to go through a bit more of this one, then I'm going to jump into some other pieces to this that I think are related, because there's been a few different pieces coming out which corroborate each other in an interesting way. And so hear me out on this. Tonight's drink, by the way, is Taiwanese mountain tea. So, all right, let's see here. It says, all right. It says it's not exactly clear what the workers are pulling out from the suitcase, right? It's not clear these were ballots. It does look like it. This is the allegation. You can watch it yourselves again. It says also unclear is whether election workers knew they were being recorded. The footage was taken by security cameras belonging to State Farm Arena. The lawyer further alleged that the same woman with the blonde hair and braids, the one looked like she's pulling the strings, presumably the manager, had placed the table there earlier It's not clear whether those ballots came. It's not clear where those ballots came from, and it's not clear when the purported suitcase of thousands of ballots were placed under the table. Whether they're suitcases or a special carrier for ballots is also unclear. Now, witnesses have sworn in affidavits that the counting continued until the early morning hours, which itself would be illegal once the people leave, right? Now, here's from Pick again, quote, "Why are they counting them when the place is cleared out with no witnesses? That alone, aside from everything else, that alone is a violation of the law." Now, she argued that the number of ballots there is, quote, "beyond the margin of victory" in the presidential race, meaning what they watched through these security cameras being counted, what they watched there is beyond the margin of victory for Georgia. Meaning that if this is a video, in fact, of them committing fraud, this would flip the vote. This would flip the election in Georgia. Moving on now. According to a Michigan government copy of, quote, Dominion functional requirements, certain Dominion devices can process up to 4,900 11-inch ballots per hour, while some can process 3,600 per hour. And others can produce between 360 to 455 ballots per hour. Dominion machines are used in Fulton County. Now, President Donald Trump said on Twitter that the video is significant evidence showing voter fraud. And Trump said this, "Wow, blockbuster testimony taking place right now in Georgia." And he continues, "Ballot stuffing by Dems when Republicans were forced to leave the large counting room. Plenty more coming. But this alone leads to an easy win of the state." This alone leads to an easy win of the state. Really, Jacob Ellinger, really thank you again, just on the comments here. I hate the stupid disclaimer YouTube puts under every freaking video that the app that AP has declared Biden Harris the winner. They're gonna look so dumb if Trump wins. Yeah, I'm sure you all see it right under this video most of the time that you have these alerts saying, Biden is the proclaimed victor of the elections, according to AP. Again, why would they do that? Why would they rush to do this if that was the case? Did they do this in 2016? Not that I remember, right? Dennis Crabtree, thank you for the donation. You do great work, Josh. Thanks for that. Yeah, thank you all also. Thanks for this. I appreciate the support as well. Hey, Pearl Oyster, good seeing you here. Yeah, folks, good seeing you all here. Here, I'm going to put up again as well. Those of you just coming in, I'm going to put up again one more time the link to the YouTube video showing this taking place, showing again what is taking place with people pulling out these suitcases of what look like ballots and then proceeding to count them. It looks like. You can watch it yourself and again draw your own conclusions on it. All right, let me go further into this, right? Because I think this is a big story. This alone could flip Georgia. This alone could flip Georgia. Now, in the hearing, it was noted that officials cleared out State Farm Arena on election night, allegedly due to a pipe break. How many of you remember that? Remember when this happened? Election night, right? Election night took place, and there was news that there was a pipe break in this place in Georgia where votes were being counted, and the votes were stalled because of that. Remember, we weren't getting updates on what was happening in Georgia because of this alleged pipe break? Well, this is where that pipe break was. Now, you can see in this video, do you see water on the ground? Do you see evidence of a pipe break in this video footage? This video footage we now have, yeah, that's right. According to Dustin Schmidl, yeah, it was actually a leaky toilet, and it happened earlier in the day, like earlier in the morning. Now, they claimed that the reason they had to stop counting ballots late at night was because of this leaking pipe. This pipe broke. Do you see in this surveillance video evidence of a broken pipe? I don't see it. And if the pipe was broken and they had to make people go home, poll watchers and journalists go home because of this broken pipe, why did these people stay to count ballots? If it was okay for them to stay and count ballots, why were the watchers not allowed there? If the ballots would be what's in jeopardy, not the watchers, right? Maybe they were concerned about the health and safety of the poll watchers if they get too wet and just did their job to make sure they stayed to count every ballot, right? Which they had carefully stored in suitcases underneath tablecloths, just in case, right? Again, watch it yourselves. Watch it yourselves, draw your own conclusions on it. I'll continue on this, right? Pick and other members of Trump's team said it's not clear whether this was the reason why poll workers and members of the press were kicked out. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a Republican, told reporters this week that Fulton County cut corners during the second recount. Officials of the Secretary of State's office said last month that they were seeing managerial sloppiness and chain of custody issues in the county. Now, I won't go over this whole story because I think I went over the main points with it. Let's go to a different part on this, and again, look at a few different angles on this. Now, next up on here, this is an Epoch Times story. Again, I think you'll all like it. I'll post the link in the live chat. Those of you coming in after this premieres, check out the live chat for the links. And real quick, Jad, really thank you for the donation. Is there a path to mandating a nationwide election audit? I think we'd have to go state by state. I don't know if they could do a nationwide one. The current course of action is state by state. I don't think they could do nationwide. I mean, unless Trump pulls something out, and maybe he can, based on if they see enough evidence of fraud, maybe they can. But it does seem that they're going state by state. Kafai Man, thank you for the donation. Thank you for your hard work and your reporting. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you as well for the support. And Paul Izaza, thank you also. Now, this is an article from Epoch Times. Ex-CIA officer alleges that election irregularities could be part of a big scheme. Now, Gary Burtson, a former Central Intelligence Agency career officer who worked on various counterterrorism deployments, he was the guy who, he was one of the main guys who led the invasion of Afghanistan. So he's well known, actually. Now, he is saying, right, he's worried that irregularities that happened during the November elections may be part of a larger scheme. And he said this to Epoch Times: if you want to steal an election of the United States, what do? You go into the swing states, you're Democrats. You target the urban areas where you have the largest vote count. They need to produce a massive, significant, large number of votes. Therefore, they have to go to large Democratic cities. And he says here that, this is published before some stuff came out. He says he went further to allege that the vote counting was stopped in some polling sites in big cities, probably because the persons behind the scheme found out they needed to produce more ballots to fill a gap bigger than they expected. Now, it says here that Berntsen didn't provide evidence to support his claim. He didn't also name any specific person or party for wrongdoing. But it does seem to be there's evidence now of what he's saying. Now, notably, he said this before this video came out of what's happening in Georgia. He told us this before this video came out. And again, I'm going to say it here again. He alleged that the vote counting was stopped in some polling sites in big cities, probably because the persons behind the scheme found out they needed to produce more ballots to fill a gap bigger than they expected. What do we see in that video footage, that surveillance footage in Georgia, right? We see them again. And if you remember election night, it looked like Trump was going to win. Remember election night, it looked like Trump was going to win. What happened, right? They said, oh, there's a broken pipe. We can't continue counting ballots. It turned out later on that broken pipe, quote unquote, was a toilet that overflowed earlier in the day and had no impact in that room, was in a different part of the building, had no impact whatsoever. Broken pipe, everyone asked to go home. The video footage shows them telling people to go home, it appears. At the very least, we know that the journalists and the poll watchers go home. And then, breaking the law, in violation of the law, they continue counting ballots. And even more suspiciously, they pull out what appear to be ballots from underneath tablecloths in these suitcases that they were hiding under these tablecloths, pull them out and start counting the ballots. Appears in the video, which would be in violation of the law. And we do know that the numbers switched after this, meaning that the numbers do suggest they were counting ballots. Now, that does align with what Burtson suggested. Again, he alleged that the vote counting was stopped in some polling sites in big cities, probably because the persons behind the scheme found out they needed to produce more ballots to fill a gap bigger than they expected. And again, this was told to us before that Georgia story premiered. Sirius Fox, thank you for the donation. I think they're intentionally ramping up society to think at best that Trump cheated. At worst, to openly stage the very same coup they are subversively doing now with public support, CIA versus military. It does seem so. Something along these lines. Actually, I had an interesting interview. You can check out the interview we published today with Curtis Boyers. Again, the guy who made this these two agenda films. It's a very good interview. I really recommend you watch it. One thing he said is, we had a discussion, and basically what the socialists, or socialists who better know the communist, system, what they always do is they accuse others of what they themselves are doing. And this is a written strategy in their doctrine. Accuse others of what you're doing. In China, they say it's the thief who calls out, "Stop thief." This is part of their strategy. If they accuse others of launching a coup, they're probably launching a coup. If they accuse others of vote fraud, they're probably committing vote fraud. If they accuse Trump of colluding with Russia to produce disinformation to impact the election, they probably colluded with Russia to produce disinformation to impact the election. And it turns out that was the case. That whole Steele dossier was collected from Russian sources, hired by, gone through Perkins Coie and hired by the DNC and the Democratic and the Clinton campaign. Sorry. They always accuse others of what they do. And it does seem to be the case that they're telling, I was, of course, traveling a bit. If you watch CNN at some of these truck stops and so on, of course, they air it there. It's an alternate reality. They're telling people that there's not even a need to look at the allegations of voter fraud, to not even air it. They're not even showing people the evidence. They're not giving people a chance to look at the evidence themselves. They're telling people there's nothing to see there. It's all fake. This is just hyperbole from Trump. Pay no attention. And things are over. Biden won. Move on. And anything Trump says is just being deplatformed. In fact, if you look at it, Facebook, Twitter, Trump still has his Twitter account, Facebook, YouTube, a lot of these sites, right? Trump can no longer do political advertising. They banned political advertising on Facebook, at least. Almost all the mainstream news outlets, even including Fox to some extent, maybe not some of their shows, but to some extent, they're doing a blackout on the presentation of this evidence. People are not being shown evidence. They're being told to not look at the evidence. They have no way of finding it unless they go directly to the source, or they go to some channels like this one, for example, that are showing you guys this stuff. And how many people are being presented with this false picture of reality, not even being given a chance to look at the evidence themselves and to draw their own conclusions? What is going to happen if Trump can turn this around? And honestly, he has a good shot at turning it around. Just this surveillance footage in Georgia could flip the state. The amount of ballots shown being counted in this video, illegally counted, could flip the state. If Trump does turn it around and he has a strong shot at it, what's going to happen to these people who've been told this whole time, Biden won, nothing else to see here, don't even bother looking at the other side? And what's going to happen if Biden, if Trump does win, if he turns this around based on these legal challenges that these people haven't even been told are happening to some extent, that these people have been told to not pay any attention to because they have no weight to them? It's going to look like a coup. And again, they always accuse others of doing what they themselves are doing. They're launching a soft coup using ideological control, right? Using ideological influence. They're launching a soft coup, declaring Biden's the winner before it was determined, telling people to not look at any information refuting that, threatening the transition teams so they have to allow this thing to go through. This is a soft coup, and I guarantee you that if Trump does flip it, they're going to say Trump launched a coup, because they always accuse others of doing what they themselves do. Let's see here. Oh, wow. I really appreciate the support, folks. Let me see if I can go through these. Propaganda Panda, appreciate it as always. Any info on the printed ballots from China? Cindy Powell alleges some are being smuggled through Mexican border. Great work, Joshua. I have seen the allegations. I need to look into it a bit more. I can say that there was this allegation, I think, what was it, $400 million investment into Dominion tied to China. This did happen. This did happen. I mentioned before that we weren't sure who the investors were. There's some parts to that still need to come out, but this is a Chinese company that was involved at the very least in the processing of that. And so China, there is a tie to China in this. Actually, I'm going to have some interesting information on how this whole thing appears to have gone down. I don't know if I want to get into it now because it'll take a while. Why not? Why not? Okay, let me think of where to start. Now, if we look at how this whole thing went down with Dominion, Smartmatic, I'll give you a brief overview because I've been doing a lot of research on it. And I'll get something better put together than this, but just to give a basic idea. Basically what happened is that Venezuela appears to have found a way to influence the global elections, to control the systems that basically run the election systems in most of the third world at least, and America, funny enough. A lot of European countries, even Canada, they don't use these machines. Why does America use them? You have them used in Latin America, some third world countries designated, and the United States for some reason. How did this happen? Now, a lot of people, if you say that Venezuela interfered in our elections, right? It sounds ridiculous. They think, oh, that's some banana republic. They don't even have food. They're eating zoo animals because they have socialism. They're not going to interfere in our elections. There's more to it. Venezuela plays a very important role in global corruption. Venezuela plays an extremely important role in global corruption. And if you understand this role, everything you're seeing now will start making more sense. Let me explain this a bit. How did Smartmatic come about? If we go back to the time of Chavez, basically he became, he was elected as this pretty far left individual. Oftentimes these individuals, even Fidel Castro didn't call himself a socialist. They will deny it until, again, they get in and they start implementing socialist policies. And over time, then they reveal it. He gets in Venezuela. He changes the constitution of the country, makes all kinds of shifts like this, changes their flag, if I remember right, does all kinds of weird things like that. One thing he put in, though, because he changed, if I remember, term limits, he put in that you can remove a president from office, I think within 3 years of them being appointed. Again, I'm going to put together something a bit more comprehensive on this to explain it. He put that in, and sure enough, a few years later, people invoke that, and they're going to impeach him. Hugo Chavez is facing impeachment. And so what does he do? He invests money into this company that does this voting machines. They didn't actually even have voting machines, this company called Smartmatic. He invests in this company to make these voting machines. They didn't have voting machines. They literally go to a company that sells slot machines, casino slot machines, and they say, oh, we can repurpose these to be voting machines. And so the guy who's facing impeachment buys into this company, produces these machines, and then uses these machines in his own impeachment election. The guy who's facing impeachment himself buys control of, and to this day, the family does control it. Apparently, even according to some of the public reporting from mainstream news outlets, even a few years ago, the guy who's facing impeachment buys into these machines, into this company that is running the election on his own impeachment, and sure enough, he wins. Now, after that, they then began exporting these to other countries, and you start seeing these other countries also flip to regimes in a very similar far left state as Venezuela. You start seeing the pink wave, they called it, of all these countries throughout Latin America shifting to far left socialist regimes. Now, here's a question. I won't go into the whole thing because the whole story of this is very interesting, but I think we need to have something more comprehensive on it. So once I put all the details together, maybe I'll do a big episode on it. I know a few reporters working on this now. Now, a big question: how could Venezuela afford this? How could Venezuela gain control, according to news reporting in New York Times and Huffington Post several years back, reporting on these exact same systems, talking about this? Huffington Post, for example, even noting in some of the reporting an exclusive story saying they found Dominion lied over it having still influence from the Chavez family because they maintain control of the intellectual property. Dominion was lying to people. This is reported by mainstream news outlets that are saying the opposite now. But aside from that, how is it that Venezuela can control this? Right? Now, Venezuela plays a very important role in global corruption. And this is not very well understood, unfortunately. Venezuela is one of the biggest oil-producing countries in the world. If you go back to World War II, they were processing, I want to say like 30%, or providing at least something like 30% of crude oil to the United States. And, they were shipping it up to the United States. The U.S. was processing it, and that was being used for the war efforts. They were one of the biggest oil-producing countries in the world. In fact, the German U-boats were even sinking some of their ships. Because of this, because they're one of the biggest oil economies in the world, or were for a long time, that just about every bank in the world had operations there. And because every bank and all these financial institutions were operating in Venezuela, every country in the world that is facing sanctions by the United States was using front companies throughout Venezuela to launder money. Venezuela was like the money laundering hub of every corrupt regime in the world, because they could get around U.S. sanctions by building companies in Venezuela and using these as front companies to get money through, into the U.S. dollar. That's the purpose Venezuela was serving for a lot of countries like China, Iran, Russia, you name it. And because of this as well, Chavez, through his regime, used this system of corruption to steal billions of dollars, not millions, billions of dollars from the Venezuelan people. You have whistleblowers coming out in this. You have evidence coming out in it, and in other words, you have these corrupt officials in Venezuela basically running the country like a mafia, robbing the Venezuelan people of billions of dollars and being engaged in this government-level criminal organization. You have different levels of crime, right? There's drug crime, which they also are involved in. There's human trafficking, counterfeit goods, all this stuff. There's also government level crime, right? This laundering of money, this whole system they created. And in order to maintain their ability to do that, they have to maintain their positions in the government. And Chavez, through the creation of Smartmatic to rig his own election, because he was facing impeachment and used his own systems to rig his own election, through the ownership of that system, began selling these systems to other countries that had very similar incidents take place, where it appeared fraud had taken place. Now, this Smartmatic system has that history, has that track record. And again, it was created by the Chavez regime in order to maintain this government-level criminal network. And we see them now maintaining this government-level criminal network in many parts of the world through the control, it appears, of this voting system. A bit of interesting context to this, right? All right, let's go into some other stories. Real quick, folks, let me go over a few questions because there's a bit coming in. This is according to Anna Duer. How can these state senators, after listening to the testimony, say we have no evidence? Again, one problem we have when it comes to investigating voter fraud is that a lot of times the people saying there's evidence or no evidence are the officials in areas where these practices had been used before. If they got elected in these states and these counties through the systems that were used in the federal elections and the presidential elections, if they invalidate the credibility of these machines, they're invalidating their own elections as well. There's personal interest involved with this, and there's also party interest involved with this. If you're an official who's, it's your livelihood, it's your job, are you going to acknowledge evidence that could possibly remove you from office? Probably not. It's one of the reasons why it's very hard to prosecute. It's not hard to prosecute. It's very hard to root out systems of voter fraud. Because again, the levers of the government are controlled by the people who may have committed the fraud sometimes. The levers of law, right? It's party interest, it's special interest, it's personal interest. Maybe they're involved with each other. It's people who could incriminate themselves by allowing the investigations to take place. I'd say all the above, of course. The rapper 10,000. There was racist Karens during Georgia press conference who attacked some people speaking out today. Yes, that's true. Actually, I was going to go over a story on that. There's even reports, for example, of witnesses being threatened. People trying to alert people of what's happening being threatened. Daniel Mora, can you speak to what this means for electoral votes for Trump? So Epoch Times, we're not going to call things until they're done with. Until all the votes are counted, until all the legal votes are counted, I should say, until all the legal processes are finished. If you go to the Epoch Times homepage, we have a great map showing where things are at. And let me pull it up real quick. In Georgia right now, you have Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona all contested. Georgia could flip based on, again, this evidence. Pennsylvania has a pretty good chance of flipping. There's a lot going on there. Between the two of them, I don't think Trump would possibly not need anymore, but we'll have to see. But again, I don't think either side is going to concede. Very, very likely, just being real, we're probably going to see this drag out until late January. We're probably going to see this drag out until late January because the normal constitutional process for doing something like this would very likely go that long. And you're not really going to see the Trump side start to gain ground until probably early to mid-January, just being realistic. Maybe things will change in terms of the challenges on the legal side because, again, they're filing lawsuits against public officials as well as when it comes to these things in general, as well as trying to bring them to the Supreme Court. They're also filing lawsuits against officials directly. And again, you have two different sides on the Trump side working on this. There's the Trump team, the Giuliani team. There's the We the People team, the Sidney Powell team. Two directions, one from the top, one from the bottom, hitting on different sides of it. And so you're probably going to see the legal challenges maybe in a couple weeks starting to gain ground. And really, I think early next month, you might see some changes where it may look like Trump is gaining some ground. And that's when the media is probably going to get real tight on this stuff. And probably mid next month is when it's going to get real iffy. I think that's when it's going to very likely go to Congress. And from there, again, just the normal constitutional process when it comes to the U.S. Constitution, how to deal with issues like this when there's this contesting of the election process. I don't think either side is going to concede on this. It's probably going to go to the very end, and we're not going to see the result of that in probably till the again late January, I would say, just on the normal process again. All right, let's see here. Wow, folks, really appreciate the support. Also, I know I'm not getting to every comment, but I really appreciate the support, folks. Thank you. Mary Rosenberg, thank you, really. And Revenge of the Sniffed, thank you. Given the mass fraud collusion of the established institutions and widespread brainwashing, what will be the fallout when Trump wins, economic or otherwise? Well, you're probably going to see nationwide protests. It's important to note that these far-left groups already have in place organizations organizing protests if that were to happen. They already have these safeguards in place. You can watch the interview I did with Curtis Bowers on the show. It premiered today where we talk about this in the beginning of it. And he said, pretty much the media is going to just lie to people until the very end of it. And then if Trump does flip it, if Trump does win, it's going to look like a coup to them because they haven't been shown any evidence along the way to justify what happened. It's going to come out of left field. They're not going to have any evidence on which to justify what they're seeing taking place. And it's going to look like Trump stole the election because they haven't been shown any evidence, any information showing them otherwise or giving them the context to understand it. And they're already organizing groups around the country to hold these mass protests. Now, would Trump allow that to happen? Given that, again, we already saw a lot of this happen, would he take harsher action like martial law or something? I wouldn't put it beyond him, actually. And in fact, remember that he removed the head of the he removed the head of the Pentagon and put this new guy in place, right? He removed Espers, put this new guy in place. This new guy has written about these urban war type situations. And some people have, based on just his writings in the past, there's speculation that maybe he would be a person who would in fact run these types of operations based on his own writings on operations like this. It's speculation, right? This isn't doctrine, but just speculation on where things could go. Regardless, you are going to see crazy mass protests, but are they going to be really much worse than the previous ones? I don't know. They were pretty bad before. We'll have to see. Now, moving on to the next story here. Now, remember, we talked about what's happening in Georgia. Again, talking about what's happening in Georgia, where you had these election workers telling people to go home. Again, there was rumors of this. They said there was a pipe burst. It turns out that was a lie. They said that was the reason on election night they had to stop counting they had to stop counting ballots in Georgia was because of this burst pipe. That was a lie. Surveillance footage of the building. Again, it was a leaky toilet earlier in the day that wasn't even in the room. Had nothing to do with this area. Surveillance footage shows that room. There's no apparent evidence of flooding or any water issues of any kind. Poll workers are still there. Poll watchers are still there. Reporters are still there. Then the poll workers tell the journalists and poll workers to go, or poll watchers to go home. After that, they pull out from underneath these tablecloths what look like suitcases. Inside the suitcases are what look like ballots, and they begin counting them. And after that, the vote, of course, started flipping in favor of Biden. And again, we had this ex-CIA top-level official come out and say that it appears there's coordination and alleges something that really corroborates what we're seeing happen in Georgia. That again, they may not have had the results they believed they would have, and so they started rigging it using this method. A bit more on this. According to Trump, I'll post the link in the live chat right now. So again, those of you coming in after this video premieres, check the live chat for the links. Now it says here, Trump, election system under coordinated assault and siege. Now, between Trump, just real quick, between Trump and this ex-CIA guy, this top-level ex-CIA guy, they're both suggesting coordination, which means intentional, which means working in conjunction, which means conspiracy, which means, which means possible treason, basically, right? This means organized coup, not just random people trying to rig the election. Election system under coordinated assault and siege. This means knowingly. This means coordinated. This means somebody was pulling the strings. This means coordinated actions to overturn the election, to overthrow the electoral process, which means subversion, which possibly means organized coup, which means possible treason. We'll have to see. Now let's read this. President Donald Trump asserted on December 2nd that he won the 2020 election and said America's election system is under siege. Trump, speaking from the White House in a video he released on social media, said his job as president is to defend the laws and Constitution of the United States, and that he's determined to protect the election system, which he said is, quote, under coordinated assault and siege. Says Trump accused Democrats of implementing a mass mail-in ballot scheme in order to steal the election and outline aspects of the November 3rd election that he sees as suspicious or fraudulent. Now, those of you who missed it, I highly recommend you watch it yourself. And I'm going to post in the description the link to it so you can watch it yourself. It's 40 minutes, 46 minutes long. Watch it, draw your own conclusions. I just posted in the live chat. Very compelling information, and as a reporter has been following the stuff he says is credible. The allegations he's making do have evidence to support it, even though people are saying otherwise. There is evidence to support his allegations. Watch the video yourself. It's 46 minutes. Highly recommend you watch it. It's very good. And again, draw your own conclusions on it, right? Watch it yourself. See what you think. Let's move on now to a few other stories. Now, this is from Epoch Times again. Post the link in. And again, those of you coming in after this premieres, check out the live chat. You can watch you can find the links. Now it says Powell and Wood alleged China responsible for election fraud. It says both Cindy Powell and Lynn Wood both said that a lot of the alleged fraud hinges on China and that its influence in this election was very strong. Powell said that China is to blame for a lot of the machines flipping the votes. Lynn Wood alleged that Governor Brian Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger have actually been bought off by the Chinese Communist Party. That'd be pretty serious. Now, do they have evidence to suggest that? These are lawyers. Let's hope they do. Lynn Wood alleging that Governor Brian Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger have actually been bought off by the Chinese Communist Party. That would be pretty serious now, wouldn't it? And again, Sidney Powell, said that China is to blame for a lot of the machines flipping the votes. And now we do see evidence that China did, at the very least, was involved in this very, very large investment into Dominion. And again, if Smartmatic, based on evidence we've seen, is still doing the software updates, still controlling the software side that's used in almost all these machines, and that was tied to the Venezuelan, Hugo Chavez regime used to rig elections, and then China is involved in the investment, does that mean that China and Venezuela, between the two of them, have influence over the global election system? That'd be pretty serious, right? Now, we'll have to see what comes out in terms of this evidence, but I think it's important to note this because, again, what we're watching is a case unfold, right? What we're watching right now is a case unfold. We can't jump to hard conclusions, but I think based on the evidence we're being shown, we can begin, again, watching the evidence as it emerges and start putting things together. Remember that normal legal cases take a lot longer than this. Normal legal cases with a whole lot less witnesses, a whole lot fewer witnesses, take a long time to make. Now imagine putting together a legal case, putting together a concise narrative, and showing the entire process of a scandal, being played out. That would normally take multiple years. If FBI did this, it'd probably take 4 years, 5 years or something. They did this in just a few weeks. And again, the process of interviewing witnesses, getting them to become willing to testify under oath and under penalty of perjury, meaning that if they lie, they commit a crime and can go to jail for it. It's not an easy process. It takes a long time. And so again, we're watching information come out. We'll have to see what comes out with this, but it's important to note the information as it does come out. And so again, keep going over this as it comes out. I'll keep giving you all updates as this information comes out. One more point on this as well. And again, not clear. Maybe this is totally unrelated, right? Maybe this is totally unrelated to Sidney Powell saying that China bought into the election, and Lynn Wood saying that China has bought off some of these top officials. What happens? Now check out that link I just posted in the live chat. U.S. slaps new visa restrictions on Chinese Communist Party members. The Trump administration has placed restrictions on the ability of Chinese Communist Party CCP members and their families to travel to the United States. The State Department, has revised its policy to reduce the maximum duration of stay for CCP members and their immediate families who hold B1/B2 visitor visas to 1 month from 10 years. They used to be able to stay for 10 years. Now it's a month. This is according to a department official saying on December 3rd. The visas are for non-immigrants traveling for business or tourist purposes. Now, currently, there are around 92 million party members in China. We'll go too deep into this. Lynn Wood, one of these lawyers, technically on the We the People side. Lynn Wood saying that alleging that some of these government officials involved in these key states with election fraud, alleging that some of these key officials are bought off by China. Sidney Powell saying that China rigged the elections by flipping votes. And now the U.S. government, the Trump administration, is placing restrictions on CCP officials and their family members, their ability to come to and stay in the United States. Why would they? Now, they were working on this for a long time. Of course, back when I was reporting more heavily on China several months back, we noted that this was being discussed. But why at this time, right? Why at this very sensitive time would they be focusing on this? Of all times, Why would this be a focus? Oh yeah, Sydney. I'm sorry. Those of you pointing out, I always say her name wrong. To be honest, I always pronounced it Cindy. Sydney. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mariko. Thank you, everyone. Sydney Powell, right? I'm learning to talk good. Yeah. You can tell again, all right? You can tell again I was a print journalist for a long time. So I'm used to reading things, not pronouncing them. Anyways, appreciate it. All right, let me go over a few more questions now on this. It's getting a bit late. Let's see here. This is according to Heskey 10600. Always good seeing you here. Where is the link for the Georgia vote counting surveillance footage in the U.S. general elections of 2020? Those of you coming in late, check out the beginning of this video. I posted it several times. I'll always have this in the live chat section. To be honest, I actually meant to put it in the description today and totally forgot. But for now, I have it in the live chat. I'll try to remember to put it in the video description. I just forgot today, to be honest. Jennifer, really appreciate the donation. Thank you. Really. Johan Kerr Carlson, thank you. Patricia, thank you. And all of you folks, I really appreciate the donations. I know I'm not getting to everyone, but really genuinely appreciate it. Thank you. Me and the whole team here. Really helps us out. Let's go on to some other questions. This is according to Seven Brain Jorge Mouse. We say that this is going on, so we're the people who are wrong. See where this is going to go if we don't stop it now. Yeah. Chris J. Why do you think Trump's legal team did not focus on the water break? I felt like I was crazy because I remember that night and CNN saying that's why they were stopping the count. My wife didn't remember. Well, it's coming out now. It's actually interesting they didn't emphasize that more because they lied, even based on the nature of the water break, they lied to the public. Even based on their claims of having to stop things because of this water break, they lied to the public. Now, again, the quote-unquote pipe burst, right, took place earlier in the day, didn't impact the room where this took place, no evidence of flooding, no evidence of problems with it, and they continued counting the votes based on the surveillance footage, regardless, broke the law again, broke the law by having the poll workers go home and then continuing to count the ballots, and did some very, very shady looking things, like, pulling this magic trick where they pull these tablecloths up and pull these suitcases out, which look like they have ballots in them, and then begin counting them. And then, of course, we see all the elections start flipping. I mean, if you watch the spikes of how this went, Trump is winning, Trump is winning, Trump is winning, and then, after they all stall the counting, and then 3 a.m., 4 a.m., late at night, you see a spike like this in ballots, and Biden flips the vote, or comes very close to flipping the vote. Hundreds of thousands of vote leads by Trump reversed in this huge spike coming into the 11th hour, and totally strange to watch, absolutely bizarre to watch. And if we see now the surveillance footage, we see them lying to us based on this pipe burst. We see them violating the law, continuing to count votes after they tell the poll workers to go home. It's serious. And as they mentioned again in this Georgia story, the number of votes counted based on the surveillance footage is enough to flip the state. Enough to flip the state to Trump. Wild times, huh? Roger Rigby, appreciate the donation. Thank you. Karen LaSalva. Josh, do you think the December 12th DC MAGA March will help get the Supreme Court to take election case? It's possible. Now, public action is one of the biggest things that gets public officials to act. If they see that people are willing to go out and protest, if they see they're willing, again, you might remember the last Million MAGA March they had in DC. The local government even restricted public parking to try to, it appeared, dissuade people from going. You know, it looked like they took action to try to block the thing from happening by, restricting public parking. Went on anyways. Things like that do have a big impact, and here's why. Because if again, now what are the two directions of the Trump team? The official Trump legal team, the Giuliani side. What are the two sides of it? I mentioned before. One side is to go to the Supreme Court and to try to push them to invalidate these elections in these key states where you've had serious evidence of fraud. The other side is to go to the state legislatures and get them to push their own electors. Two of these working in conjunction with each other, very likely, based on what we're seeing, Trump can have a strong chance at winning it. The problem is, as been told to me, the electors in these different states, and again, Trump does have a majority Republican base of electors in these, state legislatures in these states. For them to put their own electors forward, this is perceived by a lot of people in government as basically suicide, career suicide. And in other words, they're worried that if they flip things in their state, that they're never going to get reelected again. If they see, however, that there is massive public support, and they see, for example, that there is serious evidence of voter fraud and public support gets them to go and look at the evidence and consider it, this could mean that they will see that the public stands by that decision and they'll act on it. And so public support in this is probably the biggest factor, to be honest, in terms of pushing the government side to act. And again, this is the grassroots side of it all. This is a side that Trump has no influence over. Individuals feeling strongly enough to go join these big rallies and protests in order to make the call to their local government officials in terms of what they hope will happen. That is it, right? And so yes, based on that, it is a big deal. It can have a big impact. ASMRMI, appreciate the donation. Maria Hart, thank you. Really appreciate it. Norman Lipschitz, thank you. The woman with the braided blonde hair that was in the surveillance video must be identified and arrested immediately. Hopefully they figure out who she was. If they can provide evidence of them breaking the law, hopefully they do face charges, and hopefully we find out exactly what happened. And hopefully, if they are, pressed with charges, they agree to testify and hopefully get a slap on the wrist in exchange for their testimony against someone higher up in the chain. If what Trump is saying, again, this was a coordinated effort, you would assume that maybe there was someone higher up in the chain who put these suitcases of ballots, it appears, allegedly, under these tablecloths. Who coordinated that? Where did they come from, right? If they arrest this woman and she's willing to testify, maybe she'll get a slap on the wrist or lighter sentence, and maybe the person higher up is going to get investigated. This is how you would normally deal with unraveling a conspiracy like this. And when I say conspiracy, I mean people conspiring with each other in the act of a crime or an alleged crime. Well, we have evidence of crime here, right? Conspiring together in a crime. One to steal the election from the American people, not a minor crime. Tom Smith, appreciate the donation. Really appreciate the support, folks. Elizabeth Illing, thank you, really. Robert Carr, thank you. All right, another question here. This is from Belinda Hahn. This is rumor about numerous flights going into Guantanamo Bay camp detention lately. This is very odd. Do you think some higher officials, i.e. CIA leader, are captured there? It'd be pure speculation. I wouldn't be able to say. I have seen images of the flight records. It does seem to be that there are things happening at Guantanamo. And if I remember right, they're even expanding the facilities, which is odd because we're not really seeing much in terms of, counterterrorism wars right now. Has anyone heard much of ISIS lately? Has anyone heard much of Al-Qaeda lately? When was the last big terrorist? I guess we had some minor ones, and I mean, it's all pretty serious, but not large scale. Why would they need to expand Guantanamo right now if we're not seeing these cases? Maybe something is going on. It's pure speculation, but speculation based on chains of incidents we're seeing. Something is going on there. What is going on there? We can speculate. Who knows? We can speculate. Who knows? But again, it doesn't seem we're having a lot of newly arrested terrorists. And so what are they building it for, right? Something's going on. Ramona Housel, thank you for the donation. Really, again, always appreciate the support, folks. Kristen Cohen, thank you. Woman with braids will most likely go MIA, missing in action. Never to be seen again. She'll be Epsteined. You already have witnesses getting threatened. Even in these recent hearings, we had cases of this. Witnesses getting threatened. Even the people in charge of the election transition getting threatened, which is why Trump, conceded to them and advised them to let Biden pretend he's president, basically. Again, because people were being threatened and their families are being threatened. It's not far-fetched actually to say that these people might be getting threatened or that they might be in danger, because if you're having threats based on that, I think you can see that. Lynn Fay, this cybersecurity guy, Colonel Waldron or somebody, said there was data in fractions indicating an algorithm. Do you know the specifics about that? Yeah, actually watch the interview I had with Gary Milievsky. Watch the interview I published a few days ago with Gary Milievsky. Gary Milievsky is he's a really well-respected cybersecurity expert. He was one of the founders of the Department of Homeland Security. And he was on one of the big councils for the, I think, Federal Vulnerability Database. He explained these voting machines, they work on algorithms. In other words, it's not a yes or no. It's not a, punch card type, program in terms of the software. They're algorithms. Algorithms mean they have processes and patterns of alteration. They have ways of altering things based on calculations they have built into them, even according to the manuals, from what I understand. They're public, actually. Built into them, systems that can change the way that votes are weighed. These are algorithms. Why would a voting machine have an algorithm? It's really bizarre, right? Yeah, again, those of you who want to learn more about that, check out the interview I did with Gary Milievsky. It's on this channel. It was just a few days ago. I think we published it. Check it out. We explain this in depth. He's really good on it. And let's do a couple more, and then we'll call it a night. Ramona Housel, thank you for the support. Really appreciate it. And 80s Warrior, thank you. Hear it first. Here it is first. It will be another 4 years of Trump. Bet now the odds are 60-1 in Vegas. You will win big. He does. Honestly, again, he does have a serious chance at flipping it. He really does. Again, just the evidence we discussed tonight is enough to flip Georgia. Let me go briefly over a few things. Just to give you a brief overview, Missouri lawmaker calls on Attorney General to prosecute Dominion voting system over taxes. The company disputes claims says it paid its taxes in full. Dominion might be prosecuted. And allegedly, if this happens, even their software might be available for review because nobody can gain access to it, the software they use. Again, thousands of ballots were scanned numerous times in Dominion machines. This is according to a contractor witness. Dominion contractor testified on fraud at Detroit Voting Center. Right, some big things happening. The Trump is calling for a full forensic audit of mail-in ballots. Cindy Powell's election lawsuit in Georgia is getting expedited appeal. Serious stuff going on again. The Trump team is going to file a lawsuit saying 40,000 people voted twice in Nevada. Giuliani is saying you are the final arbitrator to state legislatures in Michigan. And again, I'm talking about how, again, they're going for the legislatures. They're pushing real hard on this. They're making a lot of inroads on this. Trump lawyers saying that lawmaker tried to intimidate a witness during their Michigan House hearing. One of Trump's lawyers, Jenna Ellis, saying that one of the lawmakers there tried to intimidate witnesses. They're threatening to dox people. So they get, probably face threats and so on. Americans also are going to be issued these COVID-19 vaccination cards, apparently, if you haven't heard it yet. Department of Defense confirming it, so something to look forward to as we go into 2021 soon. And again, last but not least, GOP senators, Republican senators, going to release 400 pages of documents related to the FBI's Trump-Russia investigation. And remember, Durham has now been appointed a special counsel. Durham, who was investigating the Trump-Russia investigation, now has been appointed a special counsel, meaning he has the power to prosecute. And that is one of the biggest wild cards in this whole thing. That, again, Durham hasn't done much, so who knows if he'll do anything. It's a wild card. Doesn't mean he's going to do something with it, but he has been appointed special counsel status, and with pretty broad reach, including going back to the 2016 elections, the Trump-Russia scandal, as that played out through Trump's presidency, possibly and very likely even leading in, if there was coordination with the same individuals, into fraud that took place just recently, the 2020 elections. That is the biggest wild card. It's possible he might not do anything with it. We haven't seen him do anything with it yet, but that is a huge wild card that, again, he has the ability to prosecute now. He has the authority for it. And he, for the past years, been putting together a report on this, so the investigation is already well underway. We'll have to see what happens. Again, who knows, right? And remember, Barr, of course, came out and said he hasn't seen evidence of enough voter fraud to flip the election. So Barr, again, appointed Durham to this position, so we'll have to see what happens. All right, folks, I've been going on a bit over an hour, so I'll end it here. One last thing, Ramona Housel, thank you for the donation. Ruby Freemason was one of the 4 workers at Stage. She has been identified. Maybe she will share who the braided lady is. We'll see. Now, again, I'll be giving updates Sunday through Friday. I will not be doing them on Saturday, but I'll be continuing doing these live Q&As 10:30 p.m. Eastern time, because again, I think there's enough, because of the media blackout on this and the way things are happening. I think there's a need for it right now to, just get this information out. And there's not a lot of places doing it, unfortunately. So again, folks, if you want to support this channel, please consider liking and subscribing. And also, if you want to help us grow, please consider sharing this video. It really does help us. Now, that said, as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, stay free. Thank you.